work-life balance, as far as I'm concerned, is a myth. It doesn't exist. I have never been able to achieve it. If you have, well done to you. If there's something that Hi everyone, my name is Kudzie Mapiye and welcome. On this channel, I do videos about my life living here in Australia, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. And today we're going to be diving deep into the topic of work-life balance. And this is something that I have been asked about in the comments in my previous videos. It's also something that I have conversations with my friends about, and something that I have been trying to work out till this day. And I just wanted to share some of my experiences and what it looks like for me as a full-time working mom with 2 children and trying to balance work, home life, family life, relationships, friendships, and everything else. And I've heard of this term work-life balance. And honestly speaking, it's something that I have personally never been able to achieve. I don't understand how it is even achievable, because when I think of the concept of balance, I look at things being equal, like equilibrium. You know what I mean? Like there's one thing here, there's another thing here, they're at the same level and you're balancing it out, you're making it work. For me, as a full-time working mom, I've got a 7-year-old who's in school. I've got a 1.5-year-old who's in daycare. I just don't see how it could work for me personally. And what it looks like for me is I work Monday to Friday, and basically I would say from about 8 to 4, or I'll just say 8 to 5 is the times that I usually am at work. And sometimes I do shorter days, sometimes I work right up to 5 o'clock, but that's generally the times that I work. And my son starts school at 8:30 every day, and my daughter is a bit flexible on what time she can go to daycare. And I'm also a bit flexible on what time I start. I can start anywhere between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. and work my full hours from there. And I've seen that it's been really difficult for me living in Australia to balance my work life and my home life, because at home we don't have any help, like is usually the case in Zimbabwe, where you have live-in help or someone who helps you with stuff around the house, or a nanny who helps you with the kids. My husband and I do everything ourselves, and my husband is also working, so he also has a full-time job, so we are both working and we have to juggle everything in between. Because work-life balance doesn't work for me, I find that it's either I'm achieving a lot at work and then I don't have a lot of time at home. If I focus at home, I don't have a lot of time at work. And my reality is, like, we are migrants and we are raising like first generation African Australians, our children, and we want to set them up for a future. We don't have a situation where they've had grandparents and generations back who have been working in this country and kind of like set up a good starting point for them. It's all up to us. So I personally feel the pressure to help my children have a better start in this country than the start that I had. And what makes that possible for me is to be able to work full-time. And what working full-time awards me is a very comfortable lifestyle. My kids can go to good schools and they can have they can be involved in different like out of school activities, so that they can have options in what they want to do in terms of career. They can also have like different interests that they can pursue when they're older. So that's what's important to me, and that's why I work full-time. And I know there's some women who don't work full-time and they work part-time. Some women are stay-at-home mothers, and I feel like it's all a personal choice, what you prioritize, what you want, what works for your family. Because work-life balance doesn't work for me, I've come up with a new concept that has been working very well for me. It's been working so well that it deals with my mommy guilt issues where I feel like, oh, I'm too much, I'm too involved at work. I'm not being there for my kids, or I'm too involved with the kids. I'm not setting up for the future. That guilt that always comes. I found something that works for me that gets rid of that guilt. And that thing for me is, instead of work-life balance, I have work-life priorities. And these priorities are always shifting, and I'm always re-evaluating those priorities. At the moment, I have a pretty full-on job and my kids are at school. I want to maintain a healthy relationship with my husband, with my friends, with our network and everything. So my work-life priorities look like this. When I go to work, I prioritize usually a few things. At the moment, my priorities at work are, I want to be able to do my job well. I want to be able to really progress in my career. And I want to be able to really do a good job. Like, for every task that I do, I want to be able to do it to an excellent standard. Those are my priorities at work. My priorities at home are that I want my children to have a good mix. I want them to have school and also activities. I want them to have variety in their life. I want to have a healthy relationship with my husband, and I want to maintain a fairly clean house. So those are my home priorities. And I look at it as just focusing on my priorities and not trying to balance. So when I'm at home, I'm focusing on that. I want my children to have variety. So I make myself available to take them to activities. I make myself available to be involved in those activities, know what's going on, and maintaining a clean environment for them. And I'm not talking about hotel standard, like spick and span clean. I'm talking fairly clean enough for them to be comfortable and not live in squalor. So I make sure that I tidy up every day before bed. I make sure that things are packed away, they know where to find things, everything is fairly orderly. And with my relationship with my husband, I make sure that we have at least some time to catch up, whether after dinner or as we make dinner, as we do other things, just to catch up on what's happening with our lives. And if I am able to do those things, I feel good. I feel like, okay, these are my priorities at the moment, and these priorities are being met. And I don't have to really think about is it balancing? Am I meeting my priorities? When I'm at work, I told you what the priorities are for me there. I try and do those things. And because I'm so focused on the priorities, everything seems to make space for those priorities. Everything seems to align, and how I schedule my time, how I make myself available, aligns with what my priorities are and what my availability is at that time. There are times, I remember when I first had my son 7 years ago, my work-life balance or my work-life priorities were very different because it was my first child. I felt very overwhelmed. I was still working a full-time job, and my priorities at that time were not even maintaining a fairly clean house. My home priorities were, we need to be fed. Everyone, as long as we've had a meal and as long as we're clean. So as long as my son has eaten and he has had a bath at the end of the day, I was good. Everything else wasn't a priority at that time because I didn't have the capacity, the emotional capacity, the physical capacity to be able to be concerned about other priorities. So it was just two priorities that I had. And for my work priority, I wasn't even concerned about really advancing my career or growing or developing my skills, learning new things, doing new roles. My priority at work was, I just need to go to work. I just need to make it from Monday to Friday and get paid. That was my priority. So that was just the one priority that I had. And I knew that at that time, I probably didn't even have the physical priority to be thinking about doing things to an excellent standard. I just picked one priority. I'll just go to work, do what I have to do to the best of my ability, and I'm good with that. Don't worry about growth at the moment. Don't have the emotional space. So that's how my work-life priorities have been. I think since I've been a mom, since I've been in Australia, since I've been working, it's always different things. And when I focus on priorities, I find that I am not as stressed. And when I feel like my priorities are too many, I remove a priority. I can remove a priority at work, or I can remove a priority at home, and then I have fewer priorities to focus on, and that makes me feel better. I feel like, okay, this is manageable for me at the moment. So that's how I have gone about it. Work-life balance is not something that works for me. Sometimes I have more home priorities than work priorities, and there are other times that I have more work priorities than home priorities, and it's always shifting and changing based on how I'm feeling. Like, if I'm feeling energetic, I can increase my work priorities, I can increase my home priorities. When I'm feeling burnt out, I might only have one home priority or one work priority. So that's how it works for me. And I feel like, living overseas, there's a lot of like pressure on, what your life should look like. And you might compare yourself with people who are maybe people you work with, but they might have help from their parents who live in the same country, and you don't have help with the kids. So your work-life priorities or your work-life balance might look different. And for me, for example, I've never worked part-time. It's something that I haven't done in my career. And the reason for that for me is because one of my home priorities is to have a very comfortable life. And in order for me to have a very comfortable life, I need to work full time. So that's one of the things that's important to me. And that's one of the things that I have prioritized. So it all goes down to what's important for you. I know for other people, living in comfort is not a priority. Just getting by is good enough, and they can afford to do like work part-time, do other things that work for them, and that's totally fine. So I would like you all to know, if you're living overseas, even if you're not living overseas, if you've been struggling with trying to balance work and home, and you don't feel like you're ever getting it right, don't worry. Pick just a few priorities at a time that you focus on, and then try and achieve those. See if you're able to achieve those, and if you can't, shift, minimize, downsize those priorities to something that is more manageable for you. I know that a lot of times when we talk about, work-life balance, it's a lot of societal expectations, like, oh, people will expect me to do this. People will expect me to maintain my house like this, or for my kids to be like this, or to go for these activities. If it doesn't work for you, don't pressure yourself. Use yourself and how you feel and your own mental health as a yardstick, and not how other people live their lives. What works for you is what you can do. What your capacity is what you should focus on. And not everyone is created equally. Some people do not have the emotional space to be able to deal with a full-time job. And if they do, they can have a mental breakdown. So it doesn't make sense for them to prioritize having a full-time job. Some people, in order for them to be well, in order for them to maintain good relationships with their partner, with their friends, with their family, they can't work full time. They have to work a few days, or they can't work at all. And if that's the case for you or for someone it's just about understanding that everyone is different, and how you live your life is not a standard of how other people should live their lives. You should do your own evaluation, make your own priorities, see what works for you, and start keep changing. And I'm always evaluating. Sometimes my priorities change by the week, sometimes by the day, and sometimes I can maintain those same priorities for a few months or even a few years. It just depends what's happening in my life. And I've learned not to put pressure on myself, which is something that I always used to do. I wanted to be superwoman. I wanted to always have a lot of things going and managing and being in control. But it's something that I can't do. I can't maintain so many things. Like, it's about what works for you. And for me, sometimes even I have to get rid of certain things that take up emotional space. And it could even be a relationship, a friendship, or whatever, getting off social media, whatever it is. If something I feel is taking too much emotional space for me and I don't have the capacity to manage it and it's not one of my priorities, it's something that I'm not hesitant to let go. Because what's important to me is firstly, my mental health, how I'm feeling, my happiness. And from there, I can be able to be there for my family, for my friends, and so on. So, yeah, that's how it works for me, guys. Work-life balance, as far as I'm concerned, is a myth. It doesn't exist. I have never been able to achieve it. If you have, well done to you. If there's something that you can share that works for you, that you think, is something that you would want other people to know, please write it down in the comments. I would love to have a chat about that more with you and see what's been working with you. Or if you've been struggling with a particular area, share that as well. And, we can see if we can come to a resolution together or share some ideas. But at the end of the day, don't put too much pressure on yourself. See what your capacity is. See what you're able to do at that time. And for when I had my son, for example, I had a C-section that didn't go very well. The healing process wasn't great, so my body wasn't in the best form. I didn't have a lot of energy. I didn't have a lot of strength, so I couldn't manage a lot of things. So there are other external factors like that as well. If you've had children, if you've had an injury, or if you've had an illness, you might not be at the best that you can be in terms of energy, and you can't manage a lot of things. So always consider what you can manage and go from there, and pick the priorities that are important to you at that time, things that you see as critical. And don't be afraid to change things if they're not working. Drop things, pick up other things, be flexible with your own life. At the end of the day, you're accountable to yourself. Don't worry about what everyone else thinks. So yeah, that's what's been working for me. I hope you learned one or two things from that, and you can pick up something that you can use for your life that will work for you. I'll see you in the next video.